This is Advanced Math 11.5 homework questions. That's Advanced Math, Unit 11, Lesson 5 homework questions. And from this assignment, it's page 665 in your textbook. And I'm going to do these three problems, starting with number 17. Now, in the textbook, it asked for, in this section, for you to find the center, vertices, foci, and asymptotes of the hyperbola, and sketch its graph using the asymptotes as an aid. It doesn't ask for these two. It doesn't ask for the transverse or conjugate axis, the length of each, but we're going to find them because that is a question on the test. All right, so let's get ready to graph. All right, we go right one. Oh, center. Opposite of the inside, outside stays the same. X stays with X, Y stays with Y, so 1, negative 2. Go right 1, down 2. And A is right and left. That goes with the X because the X-axis runs right and left. That's 2, square root. Square root of 1 is 1, so B is 1. So I'm going to go right 2 and left 2. Up 1 and down 1 from the center, and then make my dotted rectangular shape. And then draw my asymptotes, which are the diagonals of the rectangle. And this is what I use to help determine how wide or thin my graph is. Okay, because the X comes first, that means it's going to open right and left. So it's going to open from this dot and that dot, going right and left, going towards the asymptotes. Okay, so vertices are these 2 points here. Has nothing to do with which axis is bigger or smaller. It just depends on what comes first. Since X comes first, it's these two dots here, right and left. Okay, so that's negative 1, negative 2. And this one is 1, 2, 3, comma, negative 2. All right. I'm going to find these two first since it's easiest. The length, the transverse axis, if you remember from notes, is the distance between the vertices. So if I went right and left 2, the total length is 4. Wrote that in the wrong spot. Put that 4 there. The conjugate, the length of the conjugate axis is the distance between the points that are not the vertices. So that's these 2 points here. And I went up 1 and down 1, which is a total length of 2. Okay, now I'm going to do my c squared equals a squared plus b squared. Remember, that's a minus, so the formula is a plus. C squared equals 4 plus 1. C equals the square root of 5. Now the square root of 5 is approximately 2.2, and I'm only doing that for the graphing purpose of it. I'm going to go right and left 2.2. So 1, 2.2, and left 1, 2.2, which makes sense because I'm right outside the box shape but inside the cups. And when I moved right and left from the center, when I moved right and left from the center, what's changing right and left is the X value. So the 1, I'm going to put 1 plus or minus, how far did I move? Root 5. And the negative 2 stayed the same. So you can see that negative 2 was constant all the way through. What's changing is the X value because I went right and left, that's the X value for my vertices, and then I went right and left for my foci. So that's why it's the 1 plus or minus root 5, and then the 1, we didn't do it, but 1 plus or minus, how far right and left did we go, was 2. 1 plus 2 is the 3, 1 minus 2 is the negative 1. Okay. Equation of the asymptotes. Y minus y1 equals plus or minus mx minus x1. Remember your x1 and y1, we always use the center, and our slope plus or minus b over a because it's the rise over the run. How far you rise is your b value, and how far you run is your a value. Okay, so I'm going to do that right now. Plus or minus b over a, that's 2 over 1, 1 over 2, sorry. plus or minus 1 over 2. Okay, so I have y, my center is what, 1, negative 2? So y minus negative 2, which would be plus 2, equals plus or minus 1/2. And I can see that here I went up 1 over 2. I mean, if I actually used my graph, I would end up with 1 over 2, which is plus or minus b over a. And then x minus 1. And that there is the equation of the asymptote. So this is all the information which you will be asked to fill it in on the test. And then this is the graph. Okay, next one I'm going to do is number 19. Which is y plus 5 quantity squared over 1/9 minus x minus 1 squared quantity squared over 1/4 equals 1. This is very similar to the second problem I did in notes for the part 2. Just the numbers are flipped around, so if you don't need this one, you can fast forward it. Okay, center, vertices, foci, the length of the transverse axis, the length of the conjugate axis, and the equation of your asymptotes. Okay. Center, opposite of the inside, outside stays the same. Now remember, x stays with x, y stays with y. Kids will often just say, oh, my center is negative 5, comma 1. No, it's 1, comma negative 5. Be very careful with that, because if you mess that one thing up on the test, everything else to follow is wrong. The graph and every bit of information here, so be careful. 1, negative 5. All right, I'm going to make my spacing kind of big because of the fractions. All right, so I'm going to go right 1, down 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, and my a is the x because it's right and left, so the square root of 1/4 is 1/2. So I'm going to go right 1/2 and left 1/2. And then my b value is my up and down, which is with the y, that's 1/3. So I'm going to go up 1/3 and down 1/3. Make this tiny little rectangular shape, and then my diagonals, which are the asymptotes. And since the y came first, that means it's opening up and down. Oh, went a little too close. Approaching the asymptotes, not touching. Okay. So that's it there. The vertices are the points where my two graphs, my two U shapes open. So it's up and it's up and down because y came first. So my center was 1, negative 5, and I went up 1/2. Nope, I went up 1/3 and down 1/3. There's different ways you can write it. I am okay if you do this. When you're moving up and down, your what's changing is your y value. So your 1 is going to stay 1, and negative 5 plus or minus 1/3. If you wrote it like that, I would be okay. Some kids don't like that, and they'll actually write the two numbers. Down 5, negative 5 plus 1/3, and negative 5 minus 1/3 would give me negative 4 and 2/3, and then negative 5 and 1/3. How you write it is up to you. If you write them two separate points or just like that, I'm totally fine either way. Okay, foci. C squared equals a squared plus b squared, always opposite of what's in the original formula. C squared equals 1/9 plus 1/4 which is 4 over 36, plus 9 over 36, which is 13 over 36. So C equals root 13 over 6, which is approximately 0.6. So I'm going to go right and left, nope, up and down because y is first, up and down 0.6. And I originally went up and down 1/2, which is 0.5, and 0.6 is slightly bigger, so that's why I'm inside the cups, outside of the box shape. Okay, so when I'm moving up and down from the center, what is changing? It's the y. So x is going to stay x, which you can see it has all the way through, and the -5 is what I'm going to do, plus or minus. How far did I go up and down? Root 13 over 6. Okay, so it kind of looks like that one there. Okay, length of the transverse axis is the length between my vertices, and I went up and down 1/3, and 1/3 and 1/3 is 2/3. The length of my conjugate axis is the length between the 2 points that are not the vertices, so that's these two here, and I went right and left 1/2. That would make a total length of 1. Okay, what do I need here? I need my center, which is 1, -5, and my slope, which is always plus or minus rise over run, b over a. b is 1/3, a is 1/2, so I have 1/3 times 2 over 1, so my slope is plus or minus 2/3. So my equation is y minus -5, which would be y plus 5, equals plus or minus 2/3 x minus 1. All right. And the next problem I'm going to do is number 29. Okay, 9y squared minus x squared plus 2x plus 54y plus 62 equals 0. And on this section of the book, they're asking us to A, find the standard form of the equation, find the center, vertices, foci, and asymptote of the hyperbola, and sketch. Excuse me. Okay, so we're going to have to complete the square. We've done that in previous lessons, which means we're going to do some rearranging. Now, whatever one is positive, I have a y squared and an x squared. The x squared is negative, the y squared is positive, so that's the one that's going to go first. 9y squared plus 54y minus the x squared plus the 2x equals -62. And I'm going to complete the square there. Going to complete the square there, which is going to require me to take out some leading coefficients. Factor out the 9. Y squared plus 6y plus blank. Here I am factoring out a -1. Keep that in mind. Kids will think, oh, I'm not taking anything out. I am taking a -1 out, which leaves me with x squared minus 2x plus blank equals -62 plus blank plus blank. 6 cut in half is 3, squared is 9. 9 times 9 is 36. -2 cut in half is -1, squared is 1. -1 times 1 is -1. It's going to be plus plus, and it looks like it's going to be plus 3 and plus 3 because 3 times 3 is 9. X minus 1 and 1 because 1 times 1 is 1. So 9y plus 3 quantity squared minus x minus 1 quantity squared equals, you plug all that in, you do the work, you end up with 18. We want it to equal 1, so we divide both sides by 18. And that gives you y plus 3 quantity squared over 2 minus x minus 1 quantity squared over 18 equals 1. And yes, you will have something like this on the test where you don't have to graph it. This is it. We are going to graph it in this problem, but on the test you'll have something like this where they give you this and they'll ask you to write the hyperbola in standard form. This would be in your workspace, this would be in your answer column, and you would get full credit if you had something like this done. Okay, this particular problem has more to it. It's asking us to find the center, the vertices, the foci. It doesn't ask for the transverse or conjugate, but we're going to find it because it will ask for it on the test. Transverse, conjugate, and the equation of the asymptotes. All right, center. Opposite of the inside, outside stays the same. X stays with X, Y stays with Y. I cannot emphasize that enough on how careful you have to be, because kids will just out of habit put -3, +1, where it's really +1, -3. Be careful. All right, let's see if we can get this graph. All right, write 1 down 3. And my A value is right and left, that's X, it's the square root of 18. The square root of 18 is approximately 4.2. The B is the up and down, and that is my Y value, because Y goes up and down, so it's the square root of 2. And the square root of 2 is approximately 1.4. Okay, so I'm going to go right and left 4.2. 1, 2, 3, 4.2. 1, 2, 3, 4.2. And I'm going to go up and down 1.4. Okay, and then make your dotted rectangular shape. And then draw your diagonals, which are your asymptotes. And because what's coming first, because Y is coming first, that means your graph is opening up and down. So it's going to go from these two dots going towards your asymptote. So it is actually going to be pretty wide, where if the other letter, if X had come first, it would have been a little more narrow. But since Y came first, it's more wide because of the way the asymptotes are. Okay, so there's our graph. And let's find our vertices. Okay, from the center, I went up and down. When you go up and down, what's changing? The Y. So 1 is going to stay, and -3 plus or minus, how far up and down did I go? I went up and down root 18. Root 18 is 3.3 root 2. Now, I'm going to write it like that, 3 root 2. That's how I'm going to leave it. Now, if you want to actually do -3 plus 4.2, -3 minus 4.2 and get decimal values, you can. I'm not. I'm going to leave it like this. Okay, foci. C squared equals A squared plus B squared. So that's going to be 18 plus 2. C equals the square root of 20. And the square root of 20 is approximately 4.5. So when it comes to graphing, I'm going to go up and down 4.5. 1, 2, 3, 4.5. 1, 2, 3, 4.5. Okay. And so, once again, when you're going up and down, what's changing is the Y value from the center. Everything's from the center. So my 1 is going to stay 1, which it has been. My center, my Y value of -3 is going to be plus or minus. How far up and down did I go? Root 20, which is 2 root 5. All right. Transverse axis is the length between these two dots right here. And how far up and down did I go? I went up and down. Let's see if I can find it. I went up and down root 18. Is that right? Yes, I went up and down Route 18 and right and left Route 2. So, and I'm going to take that back. I flip-flopped them. I went up and down Route 2. So if I went up and down Route 2, double that, it's 2 Route 2. And I went right and left 3 Route 2, double that, it's 6 Route 2. Okay. And then here I need my center, which is 1, negative 3. And my slope is plus or minus b over a. B is Route 2 over a is Route 18, which reduces to, I'm going to write a big square root, 1/9, and the square root of 1/9 is 1/3. So my slope is plus or minus 1/3. Okay, so I have y minus negative 3, which would be y plus 3, equals plus or minus a slope of 1/3, and then x minus 1. There's all the information, and there is your graph. All right. And that is it for this section of homework questions.